All right, welcome back to today's Explainer. Let's just jump right into it because today we're looking at what starts out as a totally standard Saturday morning golf review. But man, it rapidly spirals into what I can only describe as a chronological survival story. Seriously, we're breaking down one golfer's absolutely disastrous experience at the West Sayville Golf Course in Long Island, New York. If you've ever had a day on the links where literally everything that could possibly go wrong actually went wrong, well, you are going to relate to this one for sure.
So, picture this for a second. Have you ever hit just a perfect, confidence-boosting drive straight down the middle of the fairway? You walk up to where it absolutely should be and realize it was stolen by another golfer. Yeah, not lost in the rough, not dunked in a water hazard, but literally picked up and played by someone else. Keep that incredibly frustrating scenario in mind, because it's actually the central premise of the whole bizarre chain of events we're unpacking today.
You know, what's really interesting here right off the bat is the atmosphere. This wasn't one of those pristine, sunny golf mornings. Not at all. It was Saturday, July 18th, and the sky was just completely gray and hazy thanks to those Canadian wildfires that were trashing the air quality across New York. Add in the fact that this is a coastal link-style course where the wind just loves to howl, and you immediately get this gloomy, kind of ominous backdrop. The author specifically noted the air quality was awful, and they were honestly just hoping to squeeze in a quick round before heading home.
But despite the apocalyptic sky, the day actually started with some pretty real optimism. The authors swung by the post office to grab a brand new caddy bag they'd ordered and headed straight to the pro shop right after. They actually got there early enough that their 10:20 a.m. tee time was bumped up by 20 minutes. And even better, they got paired up with three really relaxed senior golfers. That usually guarantees a nice, unhurried pace of play, right? Everything seemed perfectly aligned for a great morning.
Okay, but let's talk about the course layout because that definitely factored into how things played out. They were hitting from the blue tees, which brings the total distance to a very respectable 6,500 plus yards. But honestly, distance wasn't the main hurdle here. The real defining characteristics of West Sayville, at least according to this review, are its incredibly narrow fairways and exceptionally small greens. This kind of layout doesn't just ask for precision, it flat out demands it if you want to keep your score down. And that demand for precision is just through the roof because these fairways are tight, like threading a needle tight. A lot of these holes are designed as sharp left or right doglegs, which means you're dealing with blind shots where you can't even see the green from the tee box. Because of that, you're forced into making really smart, calculated club selections. You don't necessarily want to pull out the driver here. Hitting a fairway wood or a long iron is often the much smarter play to navigate those sharp ends safely.
Once you actually manage to reach the green, the challenge totally shifts. But hey, the author was actually handling it beautifully at first. The greens are rolling at a speed of about an 8. They're small and they feature some seriously tricky, challenging slopes. But the author's short game? Totally dialed in. They noted sinking a couple of really long putts on the front nine and getting pretty much everything else within one step of the hole. So, functionally speaking, the author was playing some fantastic golf.
But here is where the story takes a wild turn. Enter the mystery of the missing Titleist. So the author was swinging a Titleist GT2 wood paired with a Speeder Gold shaft, and they noted their confidence off the tee was absolutely, quote, bursting. They were hitting these gorgeous drives with just a slight, controlled fade, zero major mistakes. But inexplicably, they'd walk up the fairway and the ball would just vanish. Just poof. It felt like a ghost story. I mean, how does a perfectly hit ball just disappear from a shortcut fairway?
Well, the crucial point became painfully clear after a couple of holes. The course design was actually working against them in a very specific, annoying way. See, West Sayville doesn't really have dense forests or thick brush separating the holes, so because the fairways are so tight and basically sitting right next to each other, players on the neighboring holes were constantly shanking their shots out of bounds and wandering over. And instead of, checking whose ball it was, these other players were just blindly hitting the author's perfectly placed drives. Unbelievable.
This whole realization led to an absolutely exasperated rant from the author. For context, they were originally playing Callaway Chrome soft balls, and they actually found one of their missing drives inexplicably sitting next to a green 2 holes away. The author straight up calls this hooligan behavior, stating bluntly, that is stealing. I can accept losing a ball, but not this. And honestly, fair enough. In all their years of playing golf in the US, they noted they had never seen etiquette quite this poor. To put a hard number on this sheer frustration, 4. The author lost 4 golf balls during this single, shortened round. And again, let's be super clear here.
These were not balls sliced into the ocean or lost in unplayable tall fescue. Nope. These were 4 balls lost directly to the golf clubs of other players who essentially treated the entire course like a free-for-all driving range.
The absolute heartbreak really peaked on the par 5 fifth hole. It's a treacherous one. The author hits this magnificent second shot with a 3-wood, placing it perfectly right in front of the green. They were thrilled. It was a fantastic shot, but as they walk up to the green to line up their approach, you guessed it, the ball had magically disappeared yet again. Knowing there were barely any trees around for it to hide in, it was glaringly obvious that someone had just wandered over and swiped yet another great shot. Just brutal. Now, you might be thinking, okay, dealing with ball thieves is bad enough, right? Well, let's look at how this mildly frustrating round devolved into an absolute nightmare scenario. It escalated in 4 distinct, agonizing steps. We've covered step 1, the stolen balls. But then came step 2, bloodthirsty mosquitoes. Followed immediately by step 3, torrential rain, which ultimately led to the grand finale, step 4, completely flooded highways on the commute home. Right on cue, the bloodthirsty mosquitoes arrived. The author vividly describes this as the absolute worst mosquito situation they have ever experienced on any golf course in the United States. Period. Anytime they got even remotely close to the bushes or the brush, these massive swarms would just attack. And we're not talking about annoying little gnats here. The author noted they were incredibly aggressive, literally clinging to their legs, arms, and neck right in the middle of a golf swing. They actually had to stop and slap them away just after following through.
And as if disappearing golf balls and literal bloodsuckers weren't quite enough for one morning, the weather forecast finally caught up with them. What started out as a light drizzle around hole 5 rapidly intensified. By the time they reached the 9th hole, the skies completely opened up into this torrential, day-ending downpour. The rain came down so fast and so hard that all the golfers on the course were forced to just abandon their rounds immediately and make a mad dash for the clubhouse.
Looking at the timeline really drives home the misery of the day. They teed off around 10:20 a.m. By 12:20 p.m., after just 2 hours, they're completely rained out at the 9th hole. But oh no, the nightmare wasn't over. That sudden afternoon downpour caused massive flash flooding all across New York. Highways were completely shut down due to standing water. The author was forced to navigate these local backroads, turning what should have been an easy 1-hour drive into a grueling 2-hour commute, finally dragging themselves to the front door at 2:20 p.m. When breaking down the final verdict in this explainer, the author draws a really direct comparison between West Sayville and another local course called Timber Point. Geographically speaking, they're super close to each other. Financially, they cost about the exact same. Structurally, the layouts are both identically narrow and demanding. But the author makes it crystal clear. Timber Point is vastly superior. Why? Because the player etiquette at West Sayville was, in their own words, the worst I have ever seen. So what is the final rating for West Sayville Golf Course? A self-described negative score. Looking back at the whole hazy, chaotic experience, the author concluded that they will absolutely, under no circumstances, ever return. In fact, they humorously hypothesized that their own personal magnetic field must be fundamentally repelled by this specific golf course. Citing the stolen balls, the aggressive bugs, and the flooded roads as cosmic proof that they were just never meant to be there in the first place. Which really leaves us with a final question to ponder for today's explainer. Knowing everything we just went through, the incredibly tight fairways, the aggressive swarms of mosquitoes attacking mid-swing, the risk of sudden floods, and definitely worst of all, the neighboring golfers treating your perfectly hit Titleist as their own personal freebie, would you ever risk a round at West Sayville, or would you take the author's advice and strictly stick to Timber Point? Definitely something to think about the next time you book a tee time. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride today, and hey, keep your eye on the ball.